designing end-to-end application, we learned that in the main stack example, right? Right. So we discussed about how to, few commands only are given to you. So we created a database and we created tables and we added records into the tables. And now we need to use a server-side scripting technology to communicate with the database. So how we can handle communication with the database. So technically, let's see how we can deal with that. So what is the basic approach of creating and working with server-side scripting? So what we will do here is in order to handle communication with the database that we created, different server-side technologies use different approaches actually configuring and dealing with the different approaches we can use. Actually, how we can manage the communication with the database in Node.js. How do we write the Node.js program? Actually, a basic Node.js server-side program. So structured program program approach comprises of two important things actually. So it comprises of few important approaches. The first approach is, first point is what we have to do is we have to install. So we have to technically, what we have to do first is we have to install the library required. Install the library required. After installing the library required, so we have to import the library into program. So by using require method, we have to import. Then access the library members by creating a reference. Access the library member by creating a reference. And implement the functionality. So that depends on different concepts what we are dealing, how to implement the functionality. Actually, in Node.js server-side program, Node.js is already installed in our computers now, but Node.js requires some additional library for handling different communications. So that's the reason. So we have to know about the process, how it is done. We need to first install the library, then import the library and access the library and use and implement its functionality actually. So that is the general approach we have to follow. So let's see how we can handle this, how we can configure this, and how to install the library required basic syntax, you know. So install the library required basic syntax, you know. So what is the syntax is we have to just use npm install and package. And how do we import the library? So importing the library is done in this way, syntactically. So we create a reference, so var some reference, and we use require, and we have to define the module name. We have to configure the module. Just like you learned in a TypeScript, we discussed about modular system. We need to follow that modular system. We need to follow the modular approach here. So we need to install the library required first. And we need to import the library. Then we can implement the functionality and use it. That is the general approach in Node.js server-side programming. So a lot of other options will be there. This is the basic important approach in the server-side programming of Node.js. So now what we are going to see here is how we can create a server-side program to communicate with the database. So let's see. That means first we will create. So what we are going to learn is create a new create a server-side program. Program. So you can simply say create a server-side program to communicate with the database, to connect with database, and you can simply say that how Node.js connecting with MongoDB. Okay, Node.js connecting with MongoDB. Okay, let's see how Node.js connects with MongoDB. How Node.js connects with MongoDB. How do we define? So what we are doing is in our project, first, this is our project workspace. In the project workspace, we will create a new folder. So we will create a folder server. So I will just create a folder called server. So server side, right. I'll just create a folder called server side. A folder we created there. All our server side scripts we will keep here. So first point is create a new folder server side. So in your workspace, create a new folder called server side in your workspace. So the folder is created. That is the folder. So we created server side. Okay. Next, after creating the folder server side, we will add our programs here. And Node.js programs are JavaScript programs. That means we will add a new file. And here we will write an option here. So that is some test connection. So test connection .js. JavaScript programs are saved with extension .js. And Node.js server-side programs are saved with extension .js. Node.js uses JavaScript server-side. So when you are using JavaScript server-side, you should not use any DOM manipulations like get element by ID, get element by name, such things you should not use because you are not dealing any DOM manipulation. You have to use JavaScript only as language. You need to deal with the JavaScript only as a language. So variable, data types, operators, statements, functions, and all modules, classes, rest of things will be same. So you have to use as a language here. Okay. Now let's create one program and let's test the program. So how we can connect with the database. One basic program, how we can connect with the database. So add a new JavaScript file into folder. And so just we are defining as test connection.js. Test connection.js. We are creating test connection.js. So this is test connection.js. And here we have to write a program to communicate with the database. And if Node.js have to connect with the database, now what you have to do is first step. So you have to install the package required for Node.js. That is the first step. So we have to install MongoDB library. MongoDB library. So install MongoDB library. So for handling communication with the MongoDB database, right? Database. Install MongoDB library for handling communication with MongoDB database. So that you can do in your workspace folder. You can do that. So how we can do that? That means we have to go to the workspace location. So currently our workspace location is this. This is the workspace location. This is the workspace location. So that is the workspace location. Here npm install MongoDB. So that's it. npm install MongoDB. It will install the MongoDB library for your workspace. Because in our workspace already we have node modules library, and node modules, everything will be copied into that location. So let's install that first here. npm install MongoDB. And we are installing the library required for MongoDB in our workspace. You can use anywhere in the workspace. That means you can use in the server side or in your Angular, any folder, anywhere, whatever you configured, you can use that. So that library, we are downloading and installing that MongoDB library. So to connect with Oracle, you need Oracle library. To connect with MySQL, you need MySQL library. To deal with the different interactions, you need those libraries. So that's what generally you learn in Node.js. So what the library is required to deal with various types of communication. So it's ready. MongoDB library is installed for our project. And you create a folder server side and create a new JavaScript file. Here we have to write a program to test the connection. We have to write the program. So how we can write the server side program? So first point is in this. First point is, as I told you, the approach is first you have to install. Already we installed. Then import the library into your program. So where Mongo client. So Mongo client is equal to require. So require. So we have to import MongoDB library. This MongoDB library again contains the server library and client library. Currently we need a client library. Then we can use MongoDB Mongo client. So MongoDB Mongo client. That is the class. That means that is the configuration. We are importing this. That means the MongoDB from the MongoDB. So you are importing this Mongo client. That is the class, Mongo client class. So we are configuring it. Now the members of this Mongo client class are accessible by using this object. Mongo client is an object. It is a user-defined object. You can create any name. And it is referring to this Mongo client class to handle communication with the MongoDB. So we have to first import the library. Now we need to connect with MongoDB. So initially I will put some comments at the beginning stage, right? Import, so MongoDB library, okay? So MongoDB client library, okay? After that, so define, so Mongo connection URL. That means configuring the connection string. So MongoDB connection string. Actually, MongoDB connects by using a simple connection URL. We have to just define the connection URL, MongoDB connection URL. So we were creating a URL, and that URL is MongoDB : /127.0.0.1:27017. This yesterday I showed you that whenever you are connecting to Mongo server, so this is the URL to connect with the Mongo server. So our Mongo client connects so to this URL. Remember, connection string depends on which database you are using. You can't remember all the connection strings. You don't know, because sometimes in complicated interviews, generally for very experienced level, they may ask like, how do we connect with a HTML table and access the data from HTML table? So seriously, you can connect with a HTML table. You can store the data in HTML table. You can access the data from HTML table also. And you can use an Excel table. You can use a HTML table. You can even read data from a text file separated with commas or something else. So that means then actually we cannot remember all these connection strings, because they vary according to the situation. Also they change, because if I am using one kind of authentication, the connection string should be in one way. Another type of authentication, it should be in another way. So instead of wasting the time of searching for connection strings here and there, you can visit a website, connectionstrings.com. So you can visit this website, and this connectionstrings.com will give you the list of all the connection strings required to all databases in the world. For every database in the world, you can see so many databases are there. Connect to Access, connect to Excel, connect to various things. You see, several databases are there. You might even never heard their names also, right? And important, so it will give you the connection string required for connecting with various databases. You can go to their official sources, or we can simply just click on some Oracle. Then it will give you the connections required for connecting with Oracle and other options, various connection strings, how to configure the connection string, how to define the authentications. So these are good to understand and deal with connections actually. These are important. So this is the location where you will get the collection of all at one place. You can Google it, doesn't matter. But this is an organized place. Generally, we developer prefer to refer very much. So if we are facing any problem in the connections with the different databases and data sources, what is the issue? And we can post the issues in this community. They can address the issues, and you have forums. You can go to the forums, you can post in the community about the problem. They can suggest you depending on different issues, right? So this is a simple one place where you can get everything. But regular, which we are using, we generally remember, and this is standard. This is the common URL for everyone to connect with MongoDB on the local machines actually. So MongoDB, and IP, or you can use local host instead of this, port number 27017. That is the URL required for connecting with MongoDB. So now the URL is ready. Now how to connect with Mongo database? That means connecting with MongoDB server. So how do we connect with MongoDB server? Just we have to use an object like Mongo client. So Mongo client.connect. Mongo client.connect. Connect with the server URL. You have to just define the URL. You can directly write the URL or keep this URL so that you can reuse there. And this URL of this connect method will return a callback function. This callback function will return error if it is unable to connect, and it will return a client object. It will return a client object. So that is if it is successful. If there is a problem, it will return an error. And if there is no problem, then it will return a client object. This client object now can connect with the database in the MongoDB. And so it can interact with the tables and deal with the tables. So this client object is required to connect with the database if it is successful, right? So, and error, that means here we will write a condition. If not error, that means if there is no error, then just put a message console.log. So message saying that connected. This message should display. Else, if there is a problem, then console.log display that problem. That means whatever error it catches, we should display. This is the basic program so that to connect with the database. And if you are connecting with Oracle or MySQL or different databases, so the communication with different databases will be in different ways. The connection strings will change, the methods will change. So we need to know that when we are dealing with that in the server-side technologies. Initially, this is the basic for connection. Now, once it is ready, now your server-side program is ready to test the connection. So I will just write this program here, and we need to compile this. You know how to compile a JavaScript file, that means Node.js file. So you can open in the terminal here, or you can open in a file explorer so that I can separately show you in the command prompt. And here we have to run, how to run Node.js programs, node test connection.js. So node test connection.js, and it shows the connection successful. It says connected. That means it is working fine. That means it is connecting with the database. If anything went wrong, it will display the problem, what went wrong. That means server is not responding or the URL is wrong. Suppose I defined here http://127.27. That is the URL. After saving that, I will test the connection one more time. It shows an error. And error is, it shows the error and it will display the complete error, invalid connection string. It will get the error and it will display the error. If it is correctly configured, MongoDB, and server is there, server is responding, then it will just display the message connected. That means now we created a simple program to connect with the Mongo database. But our point is not just this. That means I just given a process, right? So here, this is only for testing connection. I will just show you this program here. Okay, this is the program we written. This is the program we written. So we have to write this program. And after writing the program, we need to just compile. That means you have to compile and run from terminal or command prompt, that your wish, you can do anyway. So we have to just use node and test connection.js. That's what you need to do. So this is the basic thing. This is the basic approach of Node.js server-side program. How do we write? But our intention is not just connecting with the database. This is a general example. Our intention is how do we read the records from a table, how we can insert the records into the table. That means how we can manage connection with the database table. That means connecting and reading records, reading documents from MongoDB table. Table means here we say collection, right? MongoDB collection. Connecting and reading documents from MongoDB collection. So how we can connect with Mongo database? How we can connect with the MongoDB database? How we can read the data? So how we can manage that here? That is one point we need to learn. How we can read, how we can insert. So connecting and reading documents. First, let's see that. So this already I given. So here itself, I will make change now. So if there is no error, we are just displaying a message connected. So not that. If there is no error, then it has to communicate with a database. So it has to communicate with a database. Then how to communicate with a database on the server? So we will declare database, a variable database. So this should interact with the database in MongoDB server. And now if you are successful in connection, this client object is responsible for communicating with the database. So client object. And how do we read a database? You can read a database by using DB. Which database? You have to define the database name, DB database name. You know already, yesterday I showed you, DB is a command which is used for current database. So which database? You have to define the database name. Database name I am defining as Angular 10 DB. That is what we created yesterday. So that means now this database reference is responsible for interacting with the database called Angular 10 DB. So in the Mongo server, this is an object. It is a client object which connects with the server. On the server, we are picking up a database called Angular 10 DB, and its reference is here. Now, what we have to do here is from the database, this is an object that refers to Angular DB database. From the database, we want to read data from a collection. We need to read data from a collection. Then we can simply put here database in the database. So we have a collection. Which collection? Collection means table. So which table? TBL products. That is the table we created. TBL products, TBL categories. So we can configure a table here. Yeah, TBL products. Okay, in TBL products, how to read the data from the table? Usually we can use the command find. Yesterday I showed you find. And this find command will read the data present inside that products table and returns the data. We need to convert the data that is returned into array. That means toArray. toArray is a method which will return the data in an array form. And this toArray is a method. toArray is a method. This toArray method is responsible for returning an error if it is having problem in reading the data, and returning the data if it is successful in reading. That means find will query all the records and gets all the records. Find is going to get all the records. It is going to get all the records. So we are just using that option find. It is going to get all the records and convert that into array. And while converting into array, if there can be an error, and if there is no error, it will read all the documents. So documents is a reference. Now toArray is a function. toArray is a function. And this toArray function is able to handle the data. So it is able to handle the data. Actually, it uses a callback function. So how do we write the callback function? We have to write a function. And toArray is using a callback function. This callback function will have two options. One is error, another one is documents. So if it is not having an error, it should return the documents. That means if there is no error, then console.log, it should return all the documents that it collected. If there is an error, then print that error. What is the error we have to print? That means if there is a problem in connection, so the error for connection is verified. If there is a problem in reading, then this error is verified. That means it will throw an error in reading the documents. So database is an object, so which is referring to Angular 10 DB that we created yesterday. And database, through the database, by using a collection method, you can read the data from any table, and you have to define the table name. And in MongoDB, to read the data from a table, we have to use find. Find can use a lot of queries, filtering queries. If you don't mention any filtering queries, it is going to return all records. We are converting the records to array. To array converts them into array. And if it is having a problem in reading and converting into array, it will return error. If it is successful, then it will read all of them and store them in documents, which we are printing here. So if there is a problem in reading, it will show error. If there is no problem in reading, it will return all the documents in the form of an array. So in a JSON form, it will return. Let's check this and see. So let's run this one more time. Terminate the compilation and run this one more time. Test connection and hit enter, and it should be able to read all the records and display. And you can see it is returning an array. And it is a JSON type JavaScript object notation type, right? This is an array of objects. That means whatever the records are there, it is going to access the records and use the records. So this is the process, how we can connect. Now, what we need to do is this data we need to provide to a client-side technology. So client-side technology will consume this data and use this data. So how that will be done, that is the later part. But initially, so we created a program, and this program is to read the records from a database table and return the records. Similarly, so how we can insert records into table? Then we can use a combination of both of them. That means reading the records, inserting the records, both we can keep at one place and configure that. So let's see how we can insert the records into a table, how we can insert the record into a table. So for that, I will copy this first. This is another option. So this is general example, connecting and reading documents from MongoDB collection. And this is a simple program for that. So this is the program for that. That means we just put here test connection .js. Okay. This is for connecting with the database, reading the records from the database and using. This is connecting with MongoDB and accessing the records from MongoDB. Okay, next step, how we can insert the records. That means how we can insert the records. That also I will show you. That means connecting and inserting documents into MongoDB collection. So how we can manage that? So that is another one. That means connecting and inserting documents into MongoDB collection. How we can manage that? Let's see. So that means how we can configure and define that. Right? How we can configure and define that. Let's check that. Right? Let's see. For that, we will create one example. So again, how we can insert into that. One more time from the beginning, I will show you. I will clean this all up, right? I will clean this all up. Let's write from the beginning again. First step, already you installed the package. Now you can use this package across any number of programs. So first point is you need a library to communicate with MongoDB. Okay, we already have that library installed. Then first, where Mongo client, so an object, so require, so MongoDB, from MongoDB, so Mongo client, we need this library. And we need a URL, so that is MongoDB://127.0.0.127.017. That is the IP actually. Okay, then we need to configure the connection, Mongo client.connect with the URL and a callback function. And this function will return an error and will return a client object. And if there is no error, what should happen? And if there is error, then print that error. Console.log error. And if there is no error, so here we need to connect with the database and get the database. So that means we have to use a client object through that DB and Angular 10 DB. That is what we created in the last session. Now into this, we need to insert a record actually. If you want to insert a record, yesterday I showed you we have an insert command for inserting the record. And currently, so we cannot take any input here. For that, we need to design forms. From the forms, we have to take input and insert. That we are going to finally do that. As of now, there is no UI. Then what I will do is I will create data object. Later, this data object collects the data from the UI. And here we have name. Name, any name. So I am defining any name. So we are configuring a name. So that means what the data contains, name, price, and all these details. Now I'm just configuring that name. I'm defining a name. And name is just like some configuration for the name. Let's keep this as some fossil watch. Okay, right. Next, another one is price. So that is what we need, price, in stock, photo, and category ID. Okay, price, I defined some price. Okay, then in stock. So in stock is true. And one more is photo. So photo is in assets/fossil.jpg. Okay. And category ID. So is one. That is the data we have. Later, we will create a UI for this. That means we will design a form. From the form, we can collect the data and insert into the table. Now, how we can insert this data into table, MongoDB table? So we have to use database dot collection, and the collection name is TBL products. And into that collection, if you want to add any record, we have to use an insert method. There are few options here. Insert is not recommended from the latest versions. It is deprecated. So you can use insert, you can use insert one, you can use insert many. So that means depending on how many, if you created an array, by using insert many, we can manage. So otherwise, actually that insert is enough. So we can use, this is deprecated, but still it will work, right? We can use insert one. And what is the record you want to insert? The record I want to insert is present in data. That is the object that contains the data. Okay. And after that, so we will create a callback function. This callback function, it will verify whether insert successful or not. It will return an error. It will return a result. And if not error, that means inserted successfully, then console.log, and we can say record inserted. That's the message we can give. If there is an array, so then you can define by using insert. You can define by using insert many, insert one or insert many. Actually, currently this data is coming from this location. But later this data is hard coded. Later it will come from a form in the UI. So this is inserting the record. So let's insert that record. So let's run this and see whether record inserted successfully or not. That means we have to just use the collection. Two options. One is find, another insert. Similarly, update, delete, other type of operations and querying. So all these related to database and server-side technologies, right? Initially, let's run this and see now. Let's run this and see. Okay, so let's run this and see. That means test connection.js, and it should say record inserted. Okay, if record inserted, then we will check in the database. Actually, I removed that program otherwise. So CD, we can directly check there. So CD program files and CD MongoDB, CD server, CD 4.0, CD bin. Okay, and here we will say Mongo .exe. Okay, it is connecting to the client, and here we will use Angular 10 DB. Okay, then db dot tbl products dot find tbl products dot find dot pretty, and you can see that the new record fossil watch is added into this. That means we are inserting the record into the database table. We are configuring that. So that is how we can manage. So that is how we can configure and manage the communication here. So this is reading the records and inserting the records into the database. All such operations are managed in server-side technology that people will learn in server-side technology, because so see, connections and all these are not enough actually. We need connection pooling. You have to learn how to pool the connections to save the round trips. Connection related lot of issues will come. That is what your server side technologies will teach you, how to deal with various issues, right? So technically this is enough for reading the record and inserting the record into the database. That means a Node.js program is ready for handling communication with the database. That is ready. So now next important here. So that means we are reading the records and we are inserting the records. So now the point is how we can handle communication with the client now. How we can handle the communication with the client. This program also I will give you. So this program also I will give here. So this is a program for handling communication, for inserting it. Now important in the diagram, now we finished the database layer. We finished the database. We finished the database layer and the middleware. How do we handle that? Right? Technically, so configuring the server side database and the middleware. Now we need to configure this middleware. So then we can send this data to client. That means from a browser, so when user requests, this data should be sent to him. So now who is responsible for handling that communication? So that is done by using, so by using a middleware that is responsible entirely, that is managed by middleware. So middleware is a software framework which is responsible for dealing all these activities. That means now what we need to do is server side, everything is ready. Now actually what we need here is we need to create an API. How this API works, create an API. So, or you can simply say that a service, people say API or a web service, API or a web service. So service. So to handle the communication actually, how do we configure and create an API to handle? How do we create an API? Technically, what is an API? What is the concept of API? And why we need an API? So server side database communication finished. That means successfully we done that. Now why we need an API? So why we need a service, server side service, why we need that actually? For that, you need to understand a few concepts like, so we need to understand to deal with API and services. We need to know about few concepts, like we need to know about the concept of distributed computing. We need to know about the concept of distributed computing architecture. So what is distributed computing architecture? If you know a little bit idea about this, then you can understand what we are actually trying to do that. So distributed computing architecture, that means a distributed computing architecture. Usually a distributed computing architecture allows, technically it allows two applications running on two different machines two applications running on two different machines to share information, or it can be, or it can be in another way also, or two applications running on same machine, same machine, but on different process can share information. Two applications running on same machine in two different process can share information between them. And two applications, technically two applications, so running on same machine but on two different process can share information between them. This is called actually distributed computing. So distributed computing architecture. So that is the distributed computing architecture. So for example, yeah, what are the various distributed computing technologies? What is distributed computing? Just a basic concept. What is the concept of API? Actually, in order to understand the concept of API, first we need to know about the concept of distributed computing, basic level. Then we can deal with that, right? Actually, this is the distributed computing architecture. This is all not required. This is the distributed computing architecture. What are the various distributed computing architectures? Yeah, this is the distributed computing architecture actually. So that means, so distributed computing allows communication between two applications running in two different machines. So it allows communication between, two applications running on two different machines, or it allows communication between objects running in two different processes of the same machine. So this is what actually distributed computing. That means actually, so I will show you the process, how it actually works, technically how it actually works. There are so many distributed computing technologies. So like Corba, like DCOM, like RMI, like EJB, like web services, like remoting. All these are different distributed computing technologies. Corba is actually Common Object Request Broken Architecture, invented by OMG Group, Object Management Group in 1992. And it is used over across 14 languages. In different languages, it is used for distributed computing. So then we have DCOM, Distribute Component Object Model. So it is invented by Microsoft in 1993, and it is used in its language called Visual Basic. So we have RMI, Remote Method Invocation, invented by Sun Microsystems, used in J2E. We have EJB, Enterprise Java Beans, used in Java, invented by Sun Microsystems in 1999. So, and we have web services, invented by W3C, World Wide Web Consortium, and it is used in all languages, Java, .NET, PHP, C, Python. Everyone knows web services. So web service is not just only for a technology. Every technology uses web services. Every technology uses web service, and web service is a distributed computing architecture. It is a distributed computing architecture. It is a distributed computing technology. And remoting is invented by Microsoft and it is used in .NET. Technically, these are all distributed computing technologies, different distributed computing technologies. Now, important, what is the main intention? What is the main purpose of this distributed computing technologies? That means, what is the main purpose? So that means generally distributed computing is used remote, it allows remote procedure calls. They are used for inter-process communication, and they are used to design client and server application. So design 3-tier, 4-tier or entire applications. They can be used to design application to application integration and communication. They can be used to implement business to business communication. A lot of things are there. These are the key features. These are the key features. Technically, these are the key features of distributed computing. Now we need to do this. We need to implement this. We need to implement this. And the main purpose is nothing but what is the main intention of distributing architecture is. So that means those all points I will post a PowerPoint presentation. You can go through that. No need of all that. That is all generally people learn in server side technologies and services when they are learning about it. Now, so various distributed computing technologies. So various, that presentation I will give. Various technologies using distributed computing technologies, right? Distributed computing. We have technologies like CORBA, like DCOM, so RMI, like EJB, right? So like web services like remoting, etc. All this comes under this. And what is the main intention actually? So it is the main intention is to create an application, that can reach broad range of devices, So broad range of devices. So broad range of devices. That means that is from a browser, from a browser to mobile, anywhere it should able to work. So it should reach broad range of devices. That means enable communication. So enable communication. So between client and the server application. Enable communication between client and server application for sharing information. So these all are the basic advantages of this distributed computing architecture. So these are all the basic advantages. So technically, now we need to create one API. We need to create an API. And this API, that means the main intention actually is this. In general, point is very simple actually. The point is nothing but the general approach is, so we have server side. That means in the beginning, I told you, if you remembered, we have server side. Server side, we have an Facebook application. So Facebook application. So server side, we are having some YouTube or some Amazon like this. Yeah. And server side, we are having some Gmail. Now client side, so in order to access that, now early days, what we were doing, so we are using a browser. We have to open a browser and we have to access the browser. So we have Amazon Prime, like Netflix like this. Now we need to open a browser. From a browser, we need to request this. So that means you are accessing from a PC, or you are accessing from a mobile. So even mobiles and PCs, mobiles also need a browser actually, early days when the smartphones came. Mobile needs a browser, so PC needs a browser. Everywhere we need a browser to access that. But now in this machine, so you can maintain an app. In this machine, you can maintain an app. So this is client side. So this is client side. So we have Facebook app, we have Netflix app, we have client side these apps. That means on your mobiles, you can define client side. We can Facebook app, we can Netflix app. So we can have a Gmail app, client side. Now we don't need a browser. Now this server side application can communicate with the client side application. It can communicate with the client side application. It can communicate with the client side application and directly share the data to that application. It can handle the communication from that application, app to app communication. Now this is distributed application. These are distributed applications. That means Facebook, WhatsApp, Gmail, Amazon, Netflix, whatever you see on your computer. So on your mobiles, they are not mobile applications. They are actually distributed applications. They are actually distributed applications. They are all actually comes under the category of API. They are all APIs. Facebook is an API. So Amazon is an API. That means it uses all this communication in that form. So that means all the communication for them happens with an API only. That means API handles the communication between the client and server apps. So this is what we are going to do. That means server side, there is a Node.js app, and the client side, and in the client side, you have, so technically client side, you are having Angular app. Now we have to handle communication. You can see that, for example, I open here, so the Windows, now I have some Netflix, I have some weather forecast, I have some various options. These are all APIs. These are all APIs. That means they are connected with the server apps. So they communicate with the server apps. This is what we need to establish now. We need to create an API that communicates with the server side application and sends the data to the client side application. And client side application can consume it and use it. And this is what we have to create now, API. And for creating the API, handling the communication, we need a middleware. By using the middleware framework, we can create an API that can handle the communication between the server app and the client app. And that middleware is Express. We will use Express as a middleware to handle the communication and deal with the communication. So that we will see in our next session. Tomorrow, we will continue with this. Right? Tomorrow, we will see how do we create an API and establish communication with client and server application. Then we can go to Angular now, client side. And in client side Angular, we can consume the data and interact with the data. So we will see how to create the APIs and configure the APIs to send information to client side app. Then how client side app consumes your data and interacts with the data, that you will learn in Angular now. That we will see in tomorrow's session, right? Tomorrow is important because we are going to create an API that communicates with the server side, right? Yeah.